Hello everybody, Sun on Sports, your moderator and host Greg Kleven. We just want to discuss that big basketball game in the metro area between number 1 Hopkins and number 3 Robbinsdale Cooper. I guess they sold 2,400 tickets. They were sold out by noon at Robbinsdale Cooper. They could have probably held it at Target Center and hit 8,000 or 9,000. Nick, how did that game go? Any surprises?
Well, no. Frankly, I think we're finding out by the day, we've talked about it on the show a bunch of times, that there might not be a team in the history of high school basketball in Minnesota that could beat this year's Hopkins team. They proved that again Tuesday. To Cooper's credit, they made it interesting. They fell behind early. I think it was 10-2 in the first couple minutes. And on 2 or 3 occasions, they got back within a point. As the first half wore on. But Hopkins just can score in so many ways, and they do so much. And the real key is the pressure that they play with defensively that force so many turnovers that just turn into easy baskets. I mean, I bet we saw 20 dunks. And 5 of them were from Rodney Williams Jr. on Cooper. The other 15 were from a variety of kids from Hopkins. I mean, it was a classic Hopkins performance.
Is Hopkins ranked nationally in any polls have you seen?
I think they're 6th nationally in the last poll I saw, and I'd like to see who's number 1 nationally, see if they can play with them. I mean, we're talking about a team that is just stacked, and maybe against some of these teams nationally, we might say Hopkins is a little undersized just because their biggest guys are 6'7" and 6'8". You run into a team with a couple 7-footers, you might have some issues. But I mean, with what Hopkins can do against the teams in Minnesota. Inside with Brohammer, Mike Brohammer, who's 6'8".
Should they be playing on the junior college level right now instead of high school?
Well, they wouldn't. They'd probably be undefeated there too. They'd be undefeated in the MIAC. I don't doubt that. I mean, this is a team that is just we've never seen.
And you thought Cooper was a very good team, and they are.
Cooper still is a very good team, and they took a lot out of it. They learned some things. They had too many turnovers. They got out rebounded, and they had Kenwan Brown, their forward/center. Who drew Mike Brohammer down low, and Rodney Williams Jr. were both in foul trouble by the end of the first half. Rodney had 3 by the end of the first half, and so they had to protect him. And to do that, Dave Johnson switched to his zone defense in the second half just to try to keep Rodney away from any foul trouble. And doing that against Hopkins is you pick your poison. They have so many shooters. And when they get in foul trouble, they bring in guys off the bench that can still shoot and play, on the same court with anybody in the state. So it was fun to be there. It was packed. It was loud. It was electric. It was a who's who of basketball. Flip Saunders, Trent Tucker, all the faces that you see at all these big basketball games were there. It was fun. And Cooper did a great job hosting it. I thought it was organized. There wasn't a lot of pushing and shoving for seats. You see sometimes when you get crowds like this and there's nowhere to sit. You didn't hear anything behind you off the court other than cheers. And both student sections were really into it too, which was fun. And it was, like I said, it was fun to be there. And we'll see if we'll see. Who knows? Maybe on a different day, different year, it's a different outcome. But
John, are we ready to concede that this team might be better than their Edina teams in 66, 67, 68? You mentioned, I think, the 67 team is as good as you've seen.
The Edina 67 team was without a doubt the best team I've ever seen, Greg. I think before we can compare Hopkins to that team, Hopkins would have to go undefeated and win the state title by at least 10 or 15 points, which you're certainly capable of doing. Hopkins has put everybody else in the rearview mirror. They beat number 2 Sibley by 11 points. Now they beat number 3 Cooper by 22 points. It's a great team.
They put up 100 points. I mean, they scored 100 points in a high school basketball game against the third-ranked team in the state of Minnesota.
We're going to get a lot of more discussion on this Edina versus the Hopkins dynasty. But getting back to the Edina team, in 68, they won every game in the state tournament, I believe, by 30 points or more. They scored 110 points against a Moorhead team that was pretty good with Greg Troland and a few other. They scored 110, and I think they held the Spuds to 70 points. But, I mean, in that state tournament game, they scored, 108?
Greg, last week is interesting. I was out at Jerry's Foods in Edina picking up some of those bananas that they have and some other produce. Really good stuff. And what happened was somebody came up to me and said, who'd win between the 1967 Edina team and the 2009 Hopkins team? I said, well, I think Hopkins would probably win. He said, how so? How do you figure? I said, those guys on Edina, they're 57, 58 years old. I mean,
they're probably older than that.
Oh, good point, John. But, well, it'll be interesting. Things are shaping up for the postseason playoffs. You still got that Henry Sibley team, number 2. They're sort of waltzing through the classic suburban. You got number 1 Hopkins, number 3 Robbinsdale Cooper. Who's 4 and 5 now?
St. Cloud Tech's 4. They actually just had a 1-point game.
Are they a
win
pretty
over
good team?
Wilmer.
Have you heard anything?
Yeah, they're a very good team. They beat Cooper in the 3rd place game of the state tournament last year, and they returned pretty much their whole team intact this year. They're a very good team. And Osceo's 5, and we talked about Osseo last week on the show. And this is a year where it was like last year. If there was no Minnetonka, we would have a tremendous field of Minnetonka. This year, if there was no Hopkins, we would have just a battle for a state championship.
Correct me if I'm wrong. They're seeding the top 4 teams in this year's state boys basketball tournament. In every class, John, or is it
just class AAA and class 4A will they seed? Class 1A, class 2A, it'll just be a draw based on some names out of a hat.
bumped up already?